I recently discovered an ancient well under the roots of an ash tree at the far end of the garden in Lamorna, Cornwall. The entrance is deep and black, a portal reminiscent of an archetypal passage to the underworld, to hell, a hidden place. A feeling of wild blackness spills out from the well, so deep and so cold it can be felt mixing with the warm air from the garden above. The hole is lined with a glowing, luminous green moss. The darkness beckons you in, pulls you towards it like an event horizon around a black hole. But where does this blackness as a space begin and end? Looking into the dark well water, I draw the fleeting forms that emerge on the surface. It reminds me of magical practices such as scrying, where a medium would look into a vessel containing water in the hope of receiving a vision. The circular charcoal drawings are intended to have the feel of sonography, ultrasound waves scanning a dark space, anticipating an echo. The process is intuitive and felt. I'm hoping to pick up the traces of something other, something unknown, something ghostly, which arrives from elsewhere. The idea of an artist as a medium, a conduit, a psychic who is able to communicate with unseen forces is something I think about as a way to make drawings and gather information about a place. The work that I make as an artist is developed from a specific site or place, in this case, the ancient well in the garden. Intuitive knowledge about the well was built up in this way, by feeling it, sensing something deep and mysterious about it. I started to imagine what might lie in the blackness, in the mud, at the bottom of the well. The depth of the well, as a black tunnel leading down into the earth, became a metaphor for the vast and unknowable feelings experienced in grief following the death of my son, Jack Perry, in 2006. Much of my work as an artist attempts to try to understand death and the complex relationships we have to the people no longer living in our lives. Drawn from the well contains visceral sculptural forms that look like umbilical cords, made from text printed onto fabric from old school books belonging to Jack. The feeling that there is something unspeakable also present in the well, like the raw presence of grief, helps me to give form to feelings impossible to voice. The textile entrails suggest something that has been expelled from this space, something undesirable and awkward. Grief is the vehicle through which I make and keep contact with the dead. It creates a space, an aching, a longing. My work as an artist comes from this space. I'm addressing the longing, filling the void, stitching with grief, stitching meaning back into life. A remembering. Working with porcelain, I feel connected to emptiness, to transience, to something precious, to white earth and to death. I'm connected to the idea of deep time by working with this material and how a ghostly presence is felt through the making process. Porcelain fragments lie broken in pools of dust scattered across the floor of the gallery, as though tumbling out of something and down to earth. A fallen magnetic field of debris, perhaps. The idea of excavating a hollow place, a space containing a fragile echo of the past, is what I think about when I'm standing near the well in the garden. The studio is the site of a dig. When working in the studio, I imagine there is a place in my peripheral vision that is just out of reach, a place you can't quite touch. Something unknown, yet you feel it is there. It's a place you can find your way to in dreams, to wander, explore the strangely familiar landscape. It is a dusty, dry, and an empty place, a hole. If you pick up a bone and place it to your ear like a shell, perhaps you can hear the soft murmurings of the dead. This hollow place lies just out of reach, like a dusty parallel universe, a landscape where you can communicate with the dead and examine the fragments that they have left behind. In the studio, I make objects, drawings, and sculpture using materials such as dust, porcelain, and charcoal. They speak of something transient and ephemeral, becoming a kind of visual poetry. When I'm working, I'm constructing sentences, making words with materials, trying to make sense of an experience as intangible as grief. There is a sense of microcosms and macrocosms present in the exhibition drawn from the well, a place perhaps where the blackness of night meets the blackness within the depths of the well, and what might emerge when those two blacknesses collide, a new charcoaly blackness, a sad sadness, a melancholic thought, the place of grief perhaps. Standing in front of the large charcoal drawings, I feel the presence of something otherworldly and non-human. There is also absence, a lot of absence and emptiness, the hole left behind when somebody dies. I have no answers, only questions. The more work that I make, the more unanswered questions I seem to have, the more I don't understand. Sigmund Freud, in his essay on transience in 1917, said that the more fleeting something is, the more beautiful we find it. If we know that something isn't going to last forever, we experience more joy from it. Some lives don't last very long, but the joy they leave behind is like dust falling on the lives of the living.